Hi, everyone. My name is Jessie Fairbanks, and I am a features programmer with Doc NYC. I'm very pleased to welcome the director of her feature debut, Jessica Earnshaw, to talk about Jacinta. Jessica is a documentary photographer and filmmaker based in Brooklyn, New York. Her work focuses on criminal justice, healthcare, and music. Please put your hands together and welcome Jessica. Hi, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing Jacinta with Doc NYC's audience.
Thank you for having me.
It's so good to see you. I know you've been on a bit of a whirlwind ever since the film was selected for Tribeca and then have been at several film festivals since. So why don't we talk about how this project got started? I have read that you were doing a photography project about aging while incarcerated, which gave you access to the Maine State Prison. And I'm sure that, we're all curious to know if that's where the project grew out of or if you met Jacinta in a different way.
Yeah. Yes, I was doing a project on aging in prison at the prison Jacinta and her mother Rosemary were incarcerated at. It was, I was there for a few weeks photographing an older woman who was friends with Rosemary. So I met Rosemary. Rosemary told me she had a daughter. I met Jacinta, and I ended up thinking about doing a project on the women in this prison who were incarcerated with drug offenses, but also had a lot of trauma in their background. And I interviewed Jacinta and Rosemary together, and it was just like, I just was really fascinated with their relationship, just how close they were. Jacinta's finishing Rosemary's sentences when it came to like different crimes they committed together. And it just was, so that's how I met them. And that's where it started.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's such an incredible feature debut. I mean, you're tackling such a monumental issue with addiction and with generational trauma. The amount of access that you have to Jacinta, as well as Kaylin and Rosemary Rick are, it's just breathtaking and shocking. This film really holds a light up in a way that I have never seen before about the ripple effects of addiction and how devastating it is, not just for the individual who's battling themselves, but also for their families. We see Jacinta throughout the film trying to get clean, to maintain her sobriety, and the relapses, and then the culmination of that, rather shocking arrest. What was it about talking about addiction and these really, really difficult topics that drew you deeper into the story and want to share more than just Rosemary and Jacinta's dynamic that you met in the yard, but really take a hard look at what addiction does to people in their communities?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, funny enough, I didn't start this film thinking that I was going to investigate that as deeply as I ended up. I was really drawn to the dynamics between like mothers and daughters and generational trauma. That's something that I've always been really interested in when it comes to how do patterns repeat themselves through generations. I can relate, as we all can in our families, of how various things that my grandmother and my mother and then passed on to me, and that's where the interest has come from in my own life. But when with Jacinta and Rosemary, I was interested to know at the very beginning, how did Jacinta end up following in her mother's footsteps? She's, they're so close, and I could see the bond. And the initial idea had been to do a short film, so I was going to follow Jacinta out. I knew she had a heroin addiction. She was planning on going into a sober house, and she'd never really done that before, go to a sober house and really try to get sober. So I was thinking it was just going to be a short film, and I'd spent about 30 consecutive days with her by the time she actually relapsed. And those were full days, like 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. We were really, pretty close by the time that happened. And it was really tough for me to film, or not even film, because I didn't actually film the first time. I wanted to leave. Jacinta had asked me to stay. And you see that in the film where she said, thank you for not leaving me. Like, it was, I didn't know if I was strong enough to actually do a film like this, because it was just, it's really hard watching somebody use. And I think it was just like a progression. At that point, I was not really, I wasn't really sure where the film was going to go. And we had a lot of conversations, as we always did. I'm really cut out of this film a lot, but I'm constantly talking in the background with Jacinta. And we decided ultimately, when it became very clear that Jacinta did not want help, because I was trying to get her in treatment, that, you know, she wanted to, she was like, look, you know, if her experience can help other people, you know, and I was like, okay, I'm going to continue, I can continue following this, because for me, it was way more about family dynamics and also trauma than it was about the addiction. So we decided through a lot of talking about it that I would continue the film. But, you know, I think that when it comes to the drug addiction, it was so important to show that, because that is such a huge part of her life and the family's lives. And I think we really shy away from that kind of stuff. As you know, I mean, it's tough to look at, you know, but the more we don't look, the more I think women like Jacinta are in the shadows, you know, and their addiction is in the shadows too. And I think if we can all look and see it for what it is. And I think people just really need to be educated. You know, I definitely needed to be, and I learned so much by following her. So I mean, that's what ultimately why I decided that you know, that it was really important for the film. But yeah, to answer your question, it wasn't the initial thing I was after when I started.
I mean, it's such a staggeringly personal film, not just for the subjects, but also for you. It's very obvious, you know, you're in the car with her when she decides to break her sobriety, which is a monumental decision. And I think you're, as you were saying, shining a light on what addiction really is. There's a common perception that it's a lack of willpower. And so this film really illustrates how hard Jacinta continues to fight to this day to change her life and to be a better mother. Speaking of motherhood, I'd love to talk about Kaylin for a minute and pick up on some of the threads that you mentioned in your most recent question, because navigating this film of when to shoot Jacinta, when to not shoot, you know, you said you're a lot, but you know, navigating consent is really difficult when you're dealing with this type of subject matter, and then even more so when you add a minor into the mix. Kaylin is such an old soul, would not be the same without her. We see Jacinta differently through her and her experiences. So can you, how you navigated filming with Kaylin, you know, particularly because she was so young in the film, and then we watch her grow up, and what her thoughts are perhaps on the project?
For sure. Yeah, that was constantly on my mind, Kaylin. I mean, the first two times I filmed with her, she was 10. And then I didn't do any of my actual interviews with Kaylin until she was 12. So that was a little later in filming. Um, Ultimately, what was great about Kaylin is that she has very strong boundaries. And we had a lot of conversations about, like, what is this film going to be about? What am I following? And does she want to be involved? Because, you know, I wanted to make sure that she understood what the film was, and also like was actively like wanting to be part of it. And also like that she could say no to me if she didn't want me to film on a certain day, or if she didn't want me to film something. And Kaylin has such strong boundaries when it comes to stuff like that. Like, you know, if she didn't want me to film, she straight up told me. She was like, not today, you know, or if she, you know, had certain rules about like no filming when she's eating, no, you know, and I don't know. I really, you know, that makes any filmmaker feel super comfortable, you know, like just knowing where the lines are. And also like, because, you know, 10 to, you know, 13 and a half is when I finished filming. Someone changes so much in that time. Very beginning of filming, Kaylin was really into slime. Later on, when I asked her to pull, like, where's the slime? She was like, no, are you crazy? I'm not into that anymore. And so she changed a lot. And so that was really important to continue to have conversations about, like, are you still wanting to do this? You know, for her, ultimately, it became about, you know, if this could help her mother, if this can just help the thing that she's always dealt with her entire life, then she was all for it, you know? And I think that was the same with Wanda and John, because I had conversations with them also about the film. And they were just, it's been really tough for them when it comes to Kaylin, because like, where do you draw the lines as far as you letting your grandchild see her mother when it hurts her, but she also adores her mother. So, I mean, for them, they were for it because and there's also too, it's time, time on both ends. Cause I think it's important for subjects to trust you, but it's also important that you care as much as I did care about them, that I'm going to make the right decisions when it came to the edit. And also, like, I showed Jacinta the film before we finished the lock picture because I want to make sure she's comfortable. It's not my story, it's her story. So it's important that they all can, stand behind it. Wanda and John watched the film as well earlier, and they also in a lot of ways, they felt like the film illustrated the love that Jacinta has towards Kaylin in a way that they hadn't actually felt like they had experienced, because they're seeing it on a different level, that they were like, this is actually could be a healing thing for her to know how much her mother has tried to protect her. And it's not something about a lack of love. It's almost like there's a lot of love there, Sorry, long
Yeah,
answer.
I think it's fascinating to hear about how many different types of relationships you were attempting to navigate. I think it's also really important to show individuals like Wanda and John. We tend to think so much of addiction as the individual and perhaps, their children and their partners, but we don't think about all the other people that are sucked into the ongoing hamster wheel. And Wanda and John are constantly having to navigate these boundaries. There's no manual for this. Everybody's experience with addiction, whatever the vice is different. But I think it's really important to show, as we said, not just the ongoing struggle that Jacinta makes to maintain her sobriety, but the struggles of everyone around her to love her and support her, but also protect themselves. And speaking of that, since there is so much love in film, which is a testament to you as a filmmaker, obviously everyone was very comfortable and felt, that they trusted you to tell their story. We've talked about, how you did some screenings with Jacinta in the correctional facility of her fellow inmates. But I think everyone in the audience would love to hear from you an update of how Jacinta and Kaylin and Rosemary are all doing. And then afterwards, I'll ask you about some other characters.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Jacinta was released in June, so about however long ago that was. It feels like longer than it was. She's doing good. I mean, she's spent a lot of time with Kaylin this summer, which has been really nice for both of them. I've spent some time up there myself, making sure Kaylin could actually get to Jacinta because they don't live in the same state. But Kaylin has spent a lot of weekends with her, and it's been really positive. I don't think they've spent this much time together in a very, very long time. I think, as with anybody who's, in recovery, it's a day by day thing with Jacinta, like I think some days are harder than others, but overall, I think she's doing good. Kaylin is now 14 and a half. She is in high school. She is incredible, only getting better and better with age. She looks, she's taller. She almost looks different now. She's growing so fast. Rosemary is, oh, and then also with Kaylin, one of the things we're doing with the film is paying for trauma therapy with her so she can start that. And she's starting that actually this week, which is great. And so she has a trauma therapist who works with children, which is going to hopefully be good for her. Rosemary is, she's not doing great. She'll probably end up going back. We'll see what happens with Rosemary. Unfortunately, Rosemary has so much trauma. It's like that hasn't been treated. So that's really heartbreaking to me because I feel like Rosemary, she just needs help. And yeah.
There's another film there with Rosemary, as is alluded to, with the unfortunate circumstances and that horrible abuse that she was subjected to. And her journey has also been insurmountable, and she's still fighting. How about Rick and Sean and Sean's former partner or current partner, Billy?
Billy, former partner. Yeah. Well, start with Rick. Rick is, We all love Rick. Rick, we had a screening in Camden, and Rick was there with Jacinta, and it was a drive-in. And Rick was, had his hair done, had his nice shirts on, and a lot of people had said hi to him, and he was just like, thought it was a little weird that people knew who he was, but I think he really, relished in that, that people really understood what he had gone through, and I think were being very supportive of him. But yeah, he's doing the same old, which is just living in Maine and working all the time. Sean, I haven't been in touch with Sean that recently, but Sean's usually doing really well. Like, Sean's got a job and all this kind of stuff. Billy, I haven't talked to Billy in a while, although I have her on Facebook, so we communicate sometimes, but she's now in Florida. So they've split up and she's down there with her kids.
Thank you for sharing. And last question for you is, we've talked so much about trust and about, building and spending the time with everyone, but the true testament to a portrait film, especially one that is as profound and as complex as this, what were the thoughts? What did Jacinta think when she saw the final film?
So she saw it before we locked picture. We had a little pizza party at the prison and saw it together with her mental health person there. It was good. I think it was very emotional. I think it was better than she imagined, or her response. I think she was very nervous because obviously I'd filmed for 4 years. She was like, what's going to be in it? Although she knew many of the things already, but yeah, it was a lot of tears. She, cried through a lot of it. She had never seen home movies of her. So that was the first thing that she cried when she saw. I think the hardest thing to watch was Kaylin's phone call, where she was like, can it be my turn now? For Jacinta, that was such a pivotal moment, like, in her life. And also just within her addiction. She said that was the moment for her where really she was like, I gotta do better. I gotta beat this. And I think hearing it again, so she had told me about that call, and so had Kaylin. So it had really been an important thing for both of them. And she just like totally broke down when she heard that. Since then, she's watched the film like 6 or 7 times now. And so it's been like a process that every time she watches, I think it's like been really good processing. She's been sharing it with people. She shared it with some of the women at the prison. She watched it with her father, who came in. So Rick came into the prison and saw it with her aunt. And it's been good. It's been a really good, great process as far as like conversations and kind of healing around some of this stuff where they can all talk, openly. But yeah, and in that viewing with her, it was, I was willing to take anything out that she was just really, if there's something that really like just didn't feel like it represented her, or she was just really uncomfortable with, like, I was way more than willing to take those things out. That's what we showed her before we got the picture, and she ultimately was fine with everything, and we really talked it out. So I felt really good. It was scary. It was honestly it's terrifying showing subjects. Like, I think I had anxiety about that for like weeks leading up, but it went well, thank God.
Well, I think that Jacinta and Rosemary and Kaylin and Rick and everyone else that's in the film are incredibly brave for sharing their very messy and personal story. I think it's really important that you're shining a light on the fact that, dual diagnosis is necessary, that you have to deal with the underlying trauma to deal with the addiction, and how incredible that you're still an active part in their world. Again, as I said at the top, I feel like this film really shows what it is like to be an addict in a way that very few documentaries are able to grasp, because it is such an ongoing daily battle. So thank you so much for for having the persistence and the tenacity to make this film, and please pass along our gratitude to Jacinta and the rest of her family for participating. Everyone, please put your hands together at home for the director, Jessica Earnshaw. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing Jacinta with our audience.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to talk with you.